What's good, guys? I'm gonna be talking about Warrior, the show on Cinemax, and also I believe on HBO Max is gonna be on. And I'm gonna talk about my first impressions watching this series, how rewatching this show has changed my perspective on like analyzing film itself, and some flaws like season two expectations, stuff that I want them to improve on for season two, which is coming soon by the end of this week. First off, the context for me watching this show. This show, for people who don't know, is essentially about centered around the main character called Sahm, and it follows a guy. This character, Sahm, in the 1870s, San Francisco, and it has to do with like tongue wars, which is basically like organized crime, mafia type stuff in Chinatown, but also stuff to do with like the working man during that period and situations people would get in is centered around him and various other characters. I liked the show, and the reason I watched the show at the time in 2019 was because I just wanted to fill that void of something like a Daredevil, something with really, by that I mean something with really good writing, hopefully a crime drama. And the only thing that seemed to fill that void or came close to it was Cobra Kai, or not obviously not as a crime drama, but with good storytelling at its best and good fight scenes, as well as this show. But I didn't come to really appreciate it until I rewatched it recently, this past week. I'm just gonna talk about that character by character. So first off, right, the things that I've always liked, my first impressions about the show, the characters Leary, Atoy, Young June, Wang Chao, and Lee, and then Lee Yong as well, and also Father June. I just go character by character and then just tell you my thoughts, so on. I like Leary because he represents the working class struggle, and what's changed with him rewatching the show and how it's changed the way I analyze film is this: he is someone who is very blankly racist, but he isn't actually a racist based on his time. He is technically that if you're Chinese, but he's more someone who's a product of his time, because he and various other people in the show of his background casually use certain terms to refer to people of a Chinese background, right? It's very clear based on our standards today that he would be considered a racist, but he seems still empathetic in spite of that, because he points out time and time again a story as old as time, the fact that hard-working class people, hard-working class men, always get pushed aside to outsource labor for a cheaper alternative, whether that's an immigrant class, whether that's going to, you don't have to have certain type of politics to understand that is a fact of reality and history. And that makes me identify with him in spite of the thuggery and certain other things. There are things about him, he has a code, I can tell. He cares about his people. I completely relate. I understand it, and I feel for him in that sense, in spite of his setbacks in terms of his mindset of other people who aren't from the same background as him. And that's what's changed watching this show. That now when I watch films now and I see a character like Leary, I'm starting to think, how did someone in his time think? Instead of just going, you know what, you just seem like a... Because to compare Leary to someone else who's far worse, Stormfront in The Boys. Very interesting, well-written character, very well acted by Aya Cash. And she's far worse, to be clear. Leary is not a Nazi. But he's someone who, to compare to him to Stormfront, they're both characters who have like ignorant views of other groups, but that doesn't mean that you can't see them a certain type of way, that they're not three-dimensional. He's a good example of that. Another example of a character in the show who made me want to analyze film differently is a toy. Now, a toy, I've always liked a toy. My impression of her hasn't changed too much, but what I like about her is that she seems to be that representation of someone who, because of her position, she's a woman, a Chinese woman in this time, in this position. She seems to be someone who constantly tries to find like back doors and kind of different paths and smarter ways to get what she wants and to further her agenda, right? So she just needs to keep doing that and she will go far. I guarantee it. That's what I love about her character. So hats off to her. I hope my season 2 expectations of her, I hope she goes even further than she has before in doing whatever she's doing on the side. She seems like a ruthless person, even though she's trying to play the game and be smart about it. She seems like someone who doesn't mind being savage, and I like that about her. Another character that I like, Officer Lee. The reason why he's changed how I analyze dramas and stories is because, again, another example of someone who, like Leary, you expect him to think a certain way, um, but he doesn't. He seems actually quite enlightened for his time. And I actually forgot to use this example with Leary. There's an example with Leary to compare to Lee, where he comes across like African Americans in a certain place, and his like associates, his people of his background are telling them to, you can go away, like we don't want you around here, we don't want your kind around here, that kind of stuff. And he's telling them they didn't ask to be in this country, they came here because they were forced here, their ancestors were forced here. And even though he tops it off with like a way you would expect someone like him of his background at that time to top it off, yeah, it wasn't the most sensitive way that he ended that speech, but it still was that reinforcement of, you know what, everyone's having a shitty time in this country. It seems like people keep being exploited, and people for the dollar, right? Makes complete sense. Compare that to Lee. Lee is someone who he's trying to see more than just Chinese, Irish American, so on and so forth, white people versus Chinese people. He's trying to see more than that. And the assumption is someone with his accent from the part of the US where he's from would be different. And he's would be ignorant. And he doesn't come across that way. And I like that about him. Also like something about him. I'll give an example of how he's changed how I see storytelling, how I analyze it. He seems like a dude who would. There's something revealed about him in the series, and you find out that he's done something that is like, oh wow, that is a very serious thing. But he didn't seem sad about it. He actually accepted. You know what? Like I did what I had to, and I don't regret it. Like you came at something I cared about, and I retaliated. And I liked that about him. It didn't come across. It made him complex. Like we expect him to seem like soft, the way they reinforce him in the series. Like he has like a naive, too progressive for his time view of this world. But no, he's rough around the edges, and I like that about him. So shout out to Lee. I expect of him. I don't know what to expect from him, and I like that. I don't know where to go. I think he's gonna keep improving in his work as an officer, and yeah, we'll just see from there. Who else do I like in this series? Young June. I just like him because he's funny. That's why I like Young June. Something season 2 expectation. I expect them to answer how exactly he arranged the thing he does for Sahm without getting into spoilers. There's a major thing that at the very end he arranges for Sahm, which doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand. Like, I'm assuming in that culture and in Chinese culture in general, or let me be specific, Chinese mafia culture, things don't work out the way they should have done for someone like Assam. So I don't know what kind of strings he pulled to make it different for him, but he did it, and that's it. I want to see where that goes. I want there to be like a specific reason for that. Father June, I like him because he looks like a comic book villain. That's why I like him. He doesn't have a lot of input, but he just seems like he has a wise head on his shoulders, but not so wise where I'm just saying that because he doesn't seem like sharp. He seems like a sharp person, but measured, and I like that he doesn't play with the BS. Like when he knows something is not gonna work out, he just accepts it. When he knows something might go sour, he points it out immediately. Like, if you don't honor this, let's be clear. I agreed to let you do so and so. If you even go a toe above this line, I will not stop until I finish you, your dad, your nan. He's just honest. I love that about him. Very simple, very straightforward. Wang Chao, I like that he cares about himself, and what changed watching his story was realizing that he's someone who, like our toy, he's the male equivalent. He's someone who is looking for more than just the agenda of Chinatown. He wants to go above and beyond, and the way he does that in his own way is by just playing all kinds of sides. He plays the game. He plays several different games. He doesn't just go, oh, okay, let me do this and this, let me deal with this, let me deal in this stuff. He has his hand in all kinds of boxes, and I like that about him. Now, the characters who, upon rewatching, I feel like I've learned a lot more from, and I've come to appreciate even more, are Sahm, Penny, Buckley, and Bill. Now, with Bill, the reason why I've come to appreciate his character more is not necessarily for a positive reason. I just think he's in a lot of deep poo. Try not to swear. He's in a lot of deep poo. I don't know, the thing they did with him at the end of the season. He's in too deep. I don't know where they're gonna go with that. But my season 2 expectation, ironically, I have no expectation because I don't see anything positive coming from the kind of deal with the devil that he's gotten himself into by the end of season 1. But other than that, I've come to like, on the whole, I like him as a character. He's a dimwit sometimes, but his heart, you can tell he means well as an individual, and that's something that changed for me watching the show. That I realized that the time they spent with him was because he is an important individual, and he's important because he reminds you he's the heart. Him and a couple others represent the heart of this series. Working struggles, right? People trying to make their way, people struggling and trying to wade through that mess that they've made for themselves, and showing how it affects everyone around them. Speaking of such, Buckley, where are they going with Buckley? Because I've come to really like this character. He to me is the ultimate version of a toy, of Mai Ling, of Wang Chao, all the characters who you think are trying to play different sides to further their agenda and possibly agendas of other people around them. He's doing that on a next level. And he even refers to that himself in the series. Like, no, you are just a so-and-so. Me, the kind of games I'm playing, I'm aiming for the palace, the throne, the king. That's my expectation with him for season 2. I feel like he's trying to sabotage the very things that he is working with the mayor to set up. For example, certain work contracts, the supply deals he does on the side, like the criminal stuff. I feel like he's sabotaging all those things because he wants to rise in political power, which at first made no sense to me. Like, why would you sabotage things that you have designed yourself, contracts that you've designed yourself with the mayor, just to advance your own? political agenda, and then it made me realize it's because he's probably someone who will learn in season 2 has been affected by past events in a certain way, the Civil War, so on and so forth, and that makes all of that makes him probably pro Chinese Exclusion Acts, which I know is a real thing from history that happened in America, and Chinese Americans weren't considered citizens until like a certain part of the 20th century. He's probably trying to aim for the top, like beyond not just the mayor position, maybe further high political office. And I'm excited to see where he goes in season 2. That's my expectation of him. Penny, there's another person who I've seen differently. My first impression, I really did not like this character. Now, here's how I thought of her. My first impressions, I thought that she was so annoying, and she was like along with Lee a little bit. Obviously, she was that stereotype of the young, kind of progressive upstart who doesn't know how to play the game in a time like this, in a period like this, where women are perceived a certain way, where people with certain like progressive, forward-thinking views about immigrants and people of different cultures and groups, and like perception towards them, because she clearly, like, people didn't take her seriously, and I thought, why don't you just do like what a toy does but in a different way, because you're a white woman. Why don't you do what Mai Ling does but in a different way, again, because you're a white woman in this position. And then I realized it's because even she in her own way has played the game, but it's that doesn't mean that she likes the decisions she's made. Her marrying the mayor, her kind of more or less helping her dad to take care of his company, and making sure he doesn't go under and go bankrupt. Now I see her based on some conversations she's has with Sahm. Now I see her as like more kind of headstrong, and someone who probably, if she had more influence, could change things so much for San Francisco, because she really seems like she cares. She's just someone who's just in the wrong time period. You are too progressive for your time. And that was something that annoyed me at first, but now I'm starting to see potentially could go another way because of something that happens that I don't want to spoil. She's in a certain place at the end of season 1, and she's gonna rock, like, she's gonna rock that community that she's in a part of now, probably permanently, starting from season 2. Lastly, the man of the hour, Sahm. I really disliked Sahm watching this show. The first time round, this is my 4th rewatch. The second time round, I disliked, up until the very end of this show, disliked this character. I thought he was too proud, too headstrong, making too many rash decisions. But then he has a conversation. There's a conversation that he has with Wang Chao in the show, another character, in the last episode. And Wang Chao talks about his origin, how he came to America, and the theme of like having a warrior spirit and having a strong sense of self comes up. And just thinking about it right now before recording, I was writing my notes down. That's when it occurred to me. That's what they're getting at with this dude. This dude is essentially Sahm, the main character of the show. He represents that resilient sense of self, that never back down attitude that a warrior is meant to have. The amount of stuff people will push at you, especially being a Chinese immigrant at this point in time, you would need to have that attitude. You need to have that self-respect for yourself. And you see by comparison that there's some people who, because they just want to make ends meet, because they're happy to be almost subservient, like people in the background, you see by comparison that Sahm needs to, him, a toy, You need smart minds and people with certain skill sets, to change the status quo if things are gonna improve even slightly for Chinese citizens, for other citizens, in San Francisco and in Chinatown specifically. And it made me think about how Leary has that resilience, because he has to deal with the fact that Irish people are losing jobs because people are outsourcing labor in these companies for Chinese labor, for cheaper labor. Everyone has that strong warrior sense of spirit, regardless of whether they're good or bad. And now we just have to see what will happen with someone like a Sahm. I hope that because of, like I said, his skills, his physical skills, and other things, he makes smart decisions and becomes like the prime example of how things can spread beyond just the tongue wars, beyond just dealing with Chinatown. He could influence so much in this period, but he has to make the right moves. He has to make smart moves. And that's the only worry, that he could make some kind of boneheaded decisions and rash decisions. But I'm sure a toy will probably help him with that, as they imply at the very end. Other than that, like flaws that I have and I want him to improve, that's basically my thoughts of how season one, rewatching it, changed my perspective on analyzing film. But other than that, it's that quick rundown of like improvements and things I want for season two. I want them to improve the lighting and the fight scenes. I would compare it to like parts of Daredevil, like the season one hallway fight scene. I want them to pay attention to shows like that when it comes to certain scenes that are in darkened environments, nighttime, like a dark, cheap bar. Is really important to me that I appreciate the show in all aspects, and I feel like it's taken me a couple of rewatches to really appreciate the fighting and the choreography because of that. Especially the first half of this season, I don't appreciate the fighting nowhere near as much as I could have done, because they're not, you can't see them well. Like, you have to watch them on a really good quality screen. Aside from that, get rid of the hip hop soundtrack. Definitely, you need to bring like a group of musicians who come up with original concepts, Western-ish sounding, and you can mix that Western-ish sounding music mixed with any Asian influence, any like Chinese influence. The same way Mandalorian, the show, does. It has kind of like Western-y sounds, but it's also like a classical homage to OG Star Wars, right? They need to do that with Warrior. Mix the Asian culture, of course, is about Asian history in the show, but have it more Western soundish. Don't, in those songs at the end are so out of place. There's an episode with Bill where he's sad as shit about something, and you see him burst into tears and break down, and then they play a song that's so out of place. A Chinese hip hop song. No, scrap that. That is limiting the quality of the show. No, no, no. Get rid of that. Please, do it. I beg of you, showrunners, if you're watching, do it. Get rid of that show. Get rid of that in the show. What else? Oh yeah, and just like let's come up with, if you're gonna, more fights, but more interesting fights with interesting stakes. I don't just mean like the ring fight. I mean, you need. I'll give an example. So the factory fight, you need something like interesting environments to have a fight in. The fight in episode 5, the Western kind of saloon fight, you need stuff like that. You need to get out of the box ideas, because people will get bored of just seeing a Sahm or whoever just go through random people. And please get more skilled fighters, because Leong, Joe Taslim's character, maybe I need to check again, but I haven't seen his name on the season 2 IMDb page. So please get skilled fighters who can go up against Sahm, because I want to see really good fights this season, not just him just mowing down people like like any other ninja type person. I need interesting fights, man. Get me skilled people who can go head up with him. That's basically my thoughts, guys. You tell me down below what you think, whether you've seen the show, whether you haven't. Would you like to watch the show now that you've heard my thoughts and some of my issues, some of my considerations? Like, comment, press that subscribe button. Other than that, signing off. Salute.